Okay, welcome to Theories of Personality. Today we're talking about the second part of Fromm's theory. Remember, we didn't finish it all on our last lecture. So it's going to be two videos that have to do with Fromm's theory. So this is where we left off. Fromm's theory has basically personality types, what he called basic personality types. So there's different personality types. And the personality types, by the way, can be what he called productive and non-productive, okay? The productive personality types are the ones that are healthy, okay? And the non-productive personality types are the ones that are unhealthy, the ones that are not good, okay? And most of the ones he lists are gonna be non-productive or unhealthy personality types, okay? And these personality types underlie all human behavior. This is basically the personality types that exist according to Fromm, according to his theory. And the first one we have there is the receptive personality type. The receptive, receptive means that you're open to receiving, okay? So the receptive personality type are the ones that are dependent on others. They depend on others, right, for things. They want others to give them things, to do things for them. They're dependent on other people, okay? They expect to receive things from others, but they don't necessarily give. They're open to receiving, right? They want things, they need things, they plead for these things, they want these things, but they don't necessarily give other people things, okay? So they need love, but they won't necessarily give you love, okay? They want your attention, but they won't necessarily give you attention. They want you to treat them well, but they won't necessarily treat you well. It's similar to Freud's oral incorporative type, which remember is dependent and passive, right? Still functions as if they achieve most of their satisfaction through the mouth. And Hoarding's compliant type, remember the compliant type, right? Are the ones that express a need, an extreme need to be loved and to be cared for and nurtured, right? They'll basically, they'll also manipulate people to get what they want, right? That's the receptive type. It's very similar. That's the receptive type. According to Fromm, the receptive type is just the kind of person who just basically wants things from other people, but doesn't necessarily give things to other people, okay? So they're needy and they're dependent on other people. That's the receptive type. Kind of like a child will be the receptive type, okay? But that child can also manipulate you. Then we also have the exploitive type. The exploitive type, well, they're the type of people who exploit people. They take advantage of people. They take what they want from others through force, right? They'll steal things, or they'll just take things even if they don't want to give it to you, right? Or cunning. They'll trick people, deceive people, manipulate people, right? That's the exploitive type, okay? The exploitive type don't really value something if it's freely given to them. If it's too easy for them to get it, they don't really value it, okay? They feel that it's something that they have to kind of steal, something that is hard to get, right? They value that which other people own, and they value that things that must be stolen, things that must be taken. Something that is readily available, that's free, that anybody can have, that doesn't mean anything to them, okay? I'll give you an example. The exploitive type, for instance, would be people who would not be attracted to someone if that person is available. The exploitive type would be attracted to someone who is married, someone who is already in a relationship, right? Someone who is not someone they can have. That is what they would want. That is, the person who they would try to conquer, for instance, or steal away, or seduce, okay? They're the exploitive type. It could also come in other forms. People who exploit people can also, like it could be someone who's your boss and just, he's very exploitive, exploits the workers basically, works them really hard and doesn't pay them well, or maybe doesn't provide benefits, right? These are just people who take advantage of others. That's what they are, right? They're mean, they're aggressive, they're the exploitive type. It's similar to Freud's oral aggressive type, people who are mean and say mean things, right, with their mouth. And some other examples would include corporate raiders. Corporate raiders are people basically who take advantage of corporations. When a corporation is having financial trouble and they might, for instance, go bankrupt, these corporate raiders are people with a lot of money. They will come in and they'll basically make promises that they're going to save the company or the corporation by providing, you know, funding or whatever it is. And what they actually do is they end up stealing the corporation, stealing the, you know, whatever, just stealing the corporation. And then they'll take whatever is of value in the corporation, the property, they'll sell away things that are valuable like artwork or other things that the corporation might own. And then dissolve the corporation and just basically take all that money for themselves. They don't really end up saving the corporation. They end up stealing it. They make a lot of promises, get the people to sign over the corporation for them, to them, and then basically end up destroying it and taking whatever there is of value, stealing that. Okay, those are corporate raiders. These people are technically venture capitalists, but they're also referred to as vulture capitalists. They are capitalists, people who have a lot of money and basically who's just look around for, you know, corporations that are basically in trouble or dying and might be in need of rescue. And instead of rescuing them, they basically, they kill them off and then take whatever's valuable. You know, that's what they are. Those are corporate raiders. They exploit opportunities. In this case, they're exploiting corporations. But like I said, it could also be a boss that exploits the workers. Okay, or it could be someone who's dating someone and just exploits that person, or exploits people, you know, who takes advantage of people through, you know, dating or through sex or whatever it is. Could be some drug dealers, some gangster, could be many different kinds of people. It's not necessarily that they're doing something unlawful, but they take advantage of people. Fascist leaders as well, you know, will also basically exploit the people they rule over. And basically, you know, have very strict rules for them and take everything for themselves and basically, enrich themselves and leave everybody else impoverished. They have freedom, they have everything. Everyone else is not free and everyone else is poor. Those are those fascist leaders. That's the exploitive type, okay? It is common, by the way. These people do exist, as you might be imagining, okay? There are a lot of people out there who take advantage of people and exploit people. We also have the hoarding type. The hoarding type are those that derive security from amassing possessions or even personal feelings, emotions, and thoughts. So the hoarding type are, I mean, usually we're talking about people who amass possessions, and usually it's physical things. You know, they may hoard money or cars or homes or, you know, you don't necessarily have to be wealthy. Maybe you hoard books or junk, right? You know, there are those who may run a junkyard and just hoard, you know, junk. Or newspapers, who buys newspapers nowadays, right? But it can be anything, okay? They basically just collect a bunch of things. And that's what makes them feel safe. That's what makes them feel secure. They could also hoard things like emotions and thoughts, you know, people who just basically, maybe they write a lot in their journals, right? And they write a lot of thoughts, they write a lot of emotions, and they're hoarding those kind of things, feelings, so to speak. But the hoarding type are those that basically just, like to hold on to things and collect things, okay? They may build walls to protect their possessions, you know, a wall around their property to collect whatever junk or whatever stuff they're hoarding, okay? They can be orderly about their possessions, you know, organized in a certain way, or their thoughts, their feelings, but they're not always orderly. A lot of hoarders are actually very disorganized, okay? I know because my wife is the hoarding type. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. It's similar to Freud's anal retentive type, okay? Those that are very controlling and want things to be done a certain way, right? They also want to hold on to things. But basically, these are people who just hold on to things. And yeah, I did mention, I won't say too much, but yes, my wife is this type. She does hoard books. You know, she is an English teacher after all, which is, I guess, is normal for an English teacher. But she also buys a lot of things, a lot of shoes, especially for the kids, a lot of clothes. And it gets to the point where it's just, she has a ridiculous amount of things. And, you know, and they're not necessarily organized. Sometimes they're just all over the place. And it's a bunch of possessions, it's a bunch of material things. And I guess, and these people who are the hoarding type, they feel better when they have a bunch of things. Usually it's a bunch of physical things. Okay. And as you guys know, recently, because of that pandemic, because of the coronavirus, right? There were a lot of people who started hoarding things. They started hoarding, you know, food. They started hoarding toilet paper. They started hoarding medical supplies. And basically made it harder for the rest of us to get these things that we need. And why did they do that? Well, because that makes them feel secure. They have more food, they have more things, and therefore, if things stay bad, they have the things that they need to continue to feed themselves or take care of themselves in terms of maybe medicine or toilet paper, or whatever it is, sanitizer gel, something that people also hoarded. And you know, basically this makes them feel better. So now you know why people hoard things. It's for security. They feel insecure. They feel unsafe. They feel vulnerable. That's why people hoard things. And it doesn't take a pandemic to cause people to hoard things. Some people, it's just their personality type. They hoard things in general. Maybe it's pictures, maybe it's books or whatever it is. Those things make them feel secure, okay? That is the hoarding type. And there are some people who took that further, by the way, who didn't just hoard things, but also then tried to sell them on eBay or Amazon at greatly inflated prices, at prices that are 5-10 times higher than they normally would sell for. And that is exploitive, okay? That's also the exploitive type, okay? And that really got me upset that people try to do that. It's ridiculous. When people are in need, these vultures are trying to take advantage of others. That is not good. That's exploitive, okay? But the hoarding type, they worry about things, and that's why they take these things for themselves and that make them feel better. That's the hoarding type. There's also the marketing type. The marketing type, and by the way, all these that we've been talking about so far, these are all unproductive. These are all unhealthy personality types. There's also the marketing type, okay? Those that value superficial qualities, they believe personality is a commodity to be sold. Let me explain that. People who are the marketing type, these are people who are phony, who play the part. They will pretend to like you. They will pretend to be like you so that they can get you to date you, get you to give them sex, or get you to give them a job, right? Or get the promotion. They are the marketing type. They are phony, okay? For them, success depends on how well they sell themselves. So they will pretend to be different people to different people, okay? They will smile. They will laugh at the boss's jokes, even if they don't funny, just to get the boss to like them. They feel that these superficial qualities are more important than their real inner qualities and abilities, right? That what's important is that you basically got to put on a show, you got to put in an act, you got to sell yourself to get what you want, right? To get the job, to get the promotion, to get the money, whatever it is. These people are fake, basically, is what this boils down to. They don't have any real security or any genuine relations. They're fake, okay? Their true self is hidden, not just from others, right? That they, you know, that they play a role for, that they put on a mask for, right? They're fake, they're phony, but also their true self is hidden from themselves. They don't even know who they really are. They've been playing the part or being fake so long that they don't really know who they really are. A lot of people are this way too. Let me tell you an example of people who are the extreme marketing type, and that would be politicians. Politicians, most of them are big fakes, big phonies. They'll do anything to get elected. They'll change positions. They will say they believe in something. They join groups. They are the marketing type. Politics is a very evil business, okay? A lot of the things that they do behind the scenes, we're not aware of that. But most of them are phonies. There are some that are genuine and get elected because they're genuinely believe in something and they're genuinely good people who want to help others. But most of them are phony. Most of them are the marketing type. Also, your car salesman, if you want to be a successful car salesman, marketing type all the way. You have to sell yourself, right, as a nice person, right, as someone who's helpful, right, to sell them that car. And you have to say that, yeah, you think that's a good car, even though you know it's a piece of crap, right? Same thing. You want to make it in business, right? Marketing type, right? Certain professions are, these people will be very suited to, but that's the marketing type. These people are basically phony. They're fakes, right? Unhealthy way to be, an unhealthy personality type. Here's a healthy personality type. Fromm just calls it the productive personality type. The productive types, this sounds kind of idealistic, but they use all their capabilities to realize their potential. right, to develop their self. So they try to be everything they could be, right? According to Fromm, it has not yet been achieved. No one has really achieved this. No one has basically achieved, you know, their full potential. No one uses their full capabilities to the best of their ability, okay? It's something that we kind of approximate, that we don't really get to, but that's the productive personality type. It's not artistic, not restricted to things that are artistic or creative or to possessions. It's also an attitude, okay? It's also a way of being, okay? The productive type, the people who are very productive, will turn those things that are negative, those things that are bad into something good. They can transform aggressive and exploited type, or the exploited types, into initiative. So people who exploit others, you know, yeah, that's bad. But people who are productive, they will take something like that, right? Someone who's exploitive and instead make that a very productive person. That might be good for the corporation or good for the, or whatever it is for the job. But they will take something that would be seen as exploitation, or maybe they will use it to get things done, but not necessarily take advantage of people, okay? Hoarding can be turned into economic efficiency. Like if you hoard junk, if you hoard, you know, spare parts and all that stuff, that can be turned into economic efficiency. You can recycle that stuff and get money for it. Or you can, you know, try to sell parts on the internet to those who might need them. And the parts, actually, if you take all the parts, for instance, that make an automobile, those parts separately are worth more than the car as a whole. Because when the companies build them, they get those parts really cheap. But then when you get that car and you break it apart, you can sell those parts for more, of course, than the company paid for them. And it adds up to a higher price than the car would sell for on its own. That's turning into economic efficiency. And there are people, of course, who you know, create, you know, jobs out of those things, or corporations. There is such a thing as recycling. Recycling is a huge business. Now, if you try to exploit people by selling those parts at hugely inflated prices, or you hoard food and try to sell it at really inflated prices, that is, of course, exploitive. And I did see that. I saw that on the internet, and it did upset me when I saw things like that. When people are trying to sell food, right, at a price that is just ridiculous, okay? That any sane person or anyone who is not, you know, basically feeling desperate would not pay that much for that item they're trying to sell, right? But these people would use it more as economic efficiency, right? Not necessarily exploiting people, but as a way to be productive, to make money or provide jobs or things like that. That's the productive type. There's many ways in which you can be productive, okay? Where you help others and also yourself, right? And you get things done, okay? That's the productive type. And here's another unhealthy personality type, the necrophilius type. This one is very interesting. Necro, by the way, means that it has to do with death, okay? Philius means that it has to do with love, okay? These are people who are attracted to and love things that are associated with death, corpses, decay, feces, that kind of stuff. There are people who are attracted to things that are very dark and most people would consider evil and just disgusting, okay? The necrophilius type, for instance, are those, for instance, who, you know, for instance, just to give you some examples, those who love, let's say, tattoos of like skulls and demons and things like that. I've seen people walking around with tattoos like that. That's necrophilius. Or people who like to dress all in black and basically, you know, like that, you know, that basically style that's called goth, right? They're attracted to things that are dark and evil. That doesn't mean they are evil, but they're attracted to things like that. Or they like horror movies or slasher films, or films where basically you see a lot of blood and gore, okay? Things that have to do with death and destruction, that's all necrophilius, okay? These people are also devoted to law and order. They use force and power to get what they want. For instance, if let's say a country, or let's say if we have a problem with another country, right? Maybe because of terrorism or something else where we don't get along with them. These are the people who say we should just bomb those people and destroy them. Let's just bomb the hell out of them, wipe them off the face of the earth. That is the necrophilius type, right? Let's just kill them all. Never mind all the innocent people, right? Or diplomacy, let's just kill them all. Okay, let's bomb them, bomb the hell out of them. That's those people. They dream about murder, blood, and skulls. They're attracted to things that have to do with death and destruction. Okay, they also have love for the machine. They love the machine. They like to surround themselves with technology, and that might be computers, it might be TVs, but also things that have to do with guns and weapons. They love that stuff. They love machines, especially if it's weapons related. Okay, an extreme example of someone that's a necrophilius type would be Hitler. Hitler wanted to kill a bunch of people, and he killed a bunch of people. He loved machines, machines that conveyed power, machines that he can use to kill other people. And by the way, he was also attracted to things that have to do with feces and decay and things like that. I don't know if it's true, but some have written that Hitler was sexually aroused by women urinating on him. And as you know, there are people who are also, some of you may not have heard about this, but there are also people who are turned on by having people also defecate on them or poop on them. Hitler liked women who urinate on him. I wouldn't be surprised if that was true. Then it could also mean that maybe he also was attracted to feces and also maybe liked women to do that to him. I don't know. But there are some people who have written about things like that. Hitler is an extreme example of the necrophilius type, who dreams of blood, murder, and destruction, right? Killed a bunch of people, loves the machine, right? Especially things that destroy things or the machines that can be used as weapons, right? Hitler was all about that. But there are less extreme types. There are the types who just like to dress all in black, you know, because they like that kind of goth look, so to speak. Or people who just love weapons, you know, and they love guns. Or people who have a bunch of tattoos of demons and devils and skulls. There are people who are like that. Or people who like to watch slasher films. Those are all less extreme forms of the necrophilius type. Okay. By the way, just to share as a personal thing, the necrophilius type, it scares the hell out of me, to tell you the truth, right? I am afraid of all those things, right? Even seeing all those tattoos of demons and all that stuff, scary movies, right? I don't watch that stuff. Stuff with a lot of gore, heads being chopped off and limbs being cut off and seeing guts and all stuff. I can't stand that stuff. This stuff, it's just, it's shocking. But some people are like that. It's a personality type. That's a very interesting personality type, and it does exist. I've seen it. Okay. There's also the Biophyllus type. The Biophyllus type is another productive personality type, another healthy personality type. It's the opposite of the necrophilius type. Bio means life, and phyllis means that it has to do with love. These are people who love life. They're attracted to things that have to do with growth, creation, development. These are the ones who try to influence others through love, through reason, through examples, the ones who try to help others, right? And try to help other people grow and change and get better, right? They're future oriented. They're looking, you know, to help people grow and become better. They're concerned with development of themselves and others. An extreme example would be a saint, right? But it doesn't have to be a saint. It could be a counselor, a teacher, you know, someone who tries to help other people. There's many examples of this, of people who are like this. Fromm didn't talk about it in this way, but I also believe it also has to do with plants and animals. You know, I think some of this in me. I love nature. I love plants and animals, and not in the sense that I would hunt or kill off animals. I don't like that. I'm opposed to that, but I love nature. I love looking at the animals out there. I think they're, you know, beautiful creatures, innocent, right? And we take advantage of them and we kill them and we eat them. And I think that's awful. But I love plants. I have a lot of plants in my property, right? And I'm always getting more. I love things that grow and bloom and stuff like that. I love nature, right? I think that's Biophyllis as well, even though Fromm didn't talk about it that way. He talked about it more in the sense with people, things you do with people, caring for others, loving other people, trying to help them grow and develop, right? Yeah, and I am a professor. I do teach. I do have some of that in me as well, you know, but I also love nature. I think that's an example as well. Here are two other personality types. There's the having type and the being type. The having type is unhealthy, okay? These are people who define themselves according to what they have. They're competitive. They compare themselves with others, right? Who has the bigger house? Who has the nicer clothes? Who has the nicer car, or the better looking girlfriend or wife, or the more successful husband, or the better looking husband? They want to surpass others. Okay, they're competitive. They compare themselves. Okay, they're shallow. Okay, they become antagonistic. They easily get threatened, right? If, for instance, you tell them that they're not worth much, or that they're shallow, or that the things that they believe in don't really mean much, materialistic things, right? They're actually alienated from others. Their relationships are shallow and superficial. It's more about what they have, right? And showing off and things like that. That's the having type. There's a lot of people like that, by the way. That's probably one of the more common types. We do live in a very materialistic society, a very materialistic world. Okay, but if you think about it, you don't need all those bunch of things. A lot of things that people want are basically just to show off. There's also the being type, which is another healthy type. I should have listed them first, unhealthy and then healthy, right, to make it clear. But the being type is, if it doesn't say productive, that means it's unhealthy, okay? The being type is productive, is a healthy personality type. The being type are the people who define themselves according to what they are. They're focused on the present, right? They cooperate, they love, they share with others. They define themselves according to what they are, what they believe in, what they're about. It's not about the material things. It's not about the superficial things. It's about how they feel inside and what they believe inside and what they believe. Okay? That's what defines them. Okay? Like, for instance, you can be, for instance, you know, you can have a decent job and be relatively wealthy, but you drive a car that's a piece of crap, basically. Why? Because you don't think that defines you, because that doesn't matter to you. And you don't necessarily dress nice, but you're just a down-to-earth person. Or maybe you're an outdoors person. You're always dressed like an outdoors person, right? It's more about who you are rather than what you have. A lot of people do define themselves according to their possessions. That's the having type. The being type do not. Or they can be poor or middle class or whatever it is, and you know, they don't define themselves according to the car they drive. A lot of people, and I would say most, do define themselves according to the car they drive, right? They all want that nice car, right? Whether it's a BMW or a Tesla or Mercedes or whatever it is, right? If you've made it, you got to buy one of those cars, right? Because it means you've made it. Nonsense. It doesn't. It doesn't have to mean, it doesn't mean that, right? You should, right? You know, the being type, they define themselves according to what's on the inside, not what's on the outside. All right, and those are the personality types. Now let's talk about assessment, Fromm's theory. Fromm, yes, is considered a neo-Freudian. So he believed in free association, just like Freud did, right? You know, you're prompted with something, some word or some sentence or some question, and then you speak freely about whatever comes to mind. He also believed in dream analysis, right? Looking at people's dreams to see what it says about their personality, what it says about them. Okay, we've talked a lot about dream analysis because it was important to many theories. We talked about mostly with respect to Freud's theory, actually. There are self-reports that have been developed to identify the necrophilius character type, and I actually identify the personality types, Fromm's personality types in general. And there it is right there. If you click on that, if you copy that link and you put it on the address bar, it'll take you to a survey you can take, or a personality questionnaire, where you read the statements, click, 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 hit submit, and it'll tell you which personality types are stronger in you. Okay. Here's some things though, some bad news. At least I think it's bad news, in my opinion. It doesn't measure the necrophilius personality type. It left that one out for some reason. Maybe because it's a little bit controversial. I don't know. But I think it's a very interesting personality type, although it's a very unhealthy one. Okay, so you can do that if you want, if you're interested. The point is that we have certain percentages of each, okay? And you see which ones are stronger in you. As long as you're honest, though. We talked about the theory already, so you can easily fake it, okay? And those that are the marketing type, by the way, would fake it. Other things about assessment with regard to Fromm's theories, Fromm also made use of case studies. You know, he wasn't a real scientist, a real researcher, so you can't really verify what he did or replicate it, right? His ideas, or, you know, it's not based on any science. Can't quantify, you know, those things, right? He wasn't a scientist. He didn't do that. No verbatim records, no word for word records, right? No representative sample. Can't really generalize from the people he, you know, kind of helped, you know, to the people he thought about, or the people, or, you know, these people are mostly basically therapists. The people he used basically where he got ideas about his theory. His analysis of his data was subjective and unreliable, just like Freud, right? Just like all Freud and all the neo-Freudians. They weren't scientists, okay? Eventually, we will get to people who are scientists that we won't have these criticisms about. Here's some research on Fromm's theory, about Fromm's theory. Some research suggests that relatedness is related to well-being, okay? So yes, being related, being connected to others, it makes you feel better, right? You are more psychologically healthy if you are related to other people, or if you do form, remember we talked about this, if you form roots within your community, within your job, with relationships, you know, if you have roots, right? If you have love in your life, if you love others and they love you back, but you also have roots in your community, in your relationships, at your job, and things like that. Relatedness is related to well-being. It makes you feel better about yourself. You're more psychologically healthy. There was a study done at a Mexican village where they found evidence of the receptive type, right? The people who just like to receive but don't give. The hoarding type, people who collect things and amass things. The exploitive type, people who take advantage of things. And the productive personality types, right? That are more efficient and basically just try to be productive. All that was found in that Mexican village study. If you've been to Mexico, if you've been there and you've stayed long enough, you might have seen this yourself, right? The receptive type, people who just want you to give them things. And the hoarding type, I'm sure you've seen, if you've driven enough, those vast junkyards, right? Where people collect things and, you know, and sometimes they're running a business. Sometimes they're just hoarding things in case, you know, they might be able to sell that stuff later on. Or people who exploit things. There are those that will take advantage of you and rob you, right? And take things from you. But there are also people who are also productive. And, you know, and basically help others and provide jobs and who also do things that are good for society. They found evidence of all of that. And I'm sure we have that evidence here in the US as well. Other studies of Fromm's concepts, during the 1960s, the Fromm of orientation, right, self-orientation was very cynical, very rebellious, detached, undisciplined, self-indulgent. They found evidence of that in the 1960s, okay? You know, the whole hippie generation and stuff like that, but there are also some positive things associated with that. Research has also shown that 10 to 15% of people are actually the necrophilius type, okay? Where they support, you know, like heavy use of military force. You know, the people who just say, let's kill them all, let's bomb them, the hell with them, right? Repressive measures against enemies, right? The same thing about the enemies. Let's kill them, let's bomb them, you know, that kind of stuff. Want to just get rid of the enemy, right? They want a stronger police force, right? They think the police should be there to enforce the law and punish people, not to help people, not to be nice, not to be your friend. They don't believe in community policing, where the police kind of, you know, get to know the community and are more involved in the community, right? And not just punish people, right? They believe in just punishment and very strict law enforcement, right? You're using drugs, we'll throw you in jail for the rest of your life, right? You committed a crime, you know, you should be executed, that kind of stuff. Those kind of people. Very strict, heavy law enforcement, strict punishment, heavy punishment, right? And, you know, the drug laws as well, you know, heavy anti-drug laws, right? Anyone who doesn't follow the rules, who's using drugs or anything like that, let's lock them up. Let's lock them up for a long time, so for the rest of their life. Or a lot of them would even believe things like you might see in other countries, where if you use drugs, they'll kill you if you're caught with that kind of stuff. I see some of that in Donald Trump. He believes in a very strong military, very strong police force, very strong anti-drug laws, right? No baby steps here, no being nice. It's like you screwed up, you're going to pay the consequences. Those kind of people. But like I said, it's also people who are just, you know, necrophilius in other ways that, you know, this is a very, you know, a negative way to think about it. But it is negative, but there's also people who just love guns or things associated with death, or they love to hunt, or they love, you know, slasher films, or they like to dress in all black, and, you know, because they're into that goth thing that they, you know, where they, you know, whatever it is, you know, the reason why kids, you know, or even teenagers, you know, try to dress that way. But it's necrophilius, it's things associated with death. You know, I'll even tell you that some people even take it as far that they're sexually attracted to dead people. And there are people who violate the corpses of the dead, you know, and will basically have sex with those dead people. And there are others who don't take it that far, but will also, for instance, like the people that they're dating, or the people that they want them to dress up as if they're zombies or as if they're dead, and then they'll have sex with them. That's also necrophilius. Or during sex, people who enjoy being choked, or people who like to choke others or beat people or slap people and beat them up while they're having sex. Rough sex is necrophilius, right? Study of Fromm basically showed 10 to 15% of people are kind of like that. There might be more because there's a lot of different examples of how you can be necrophilius. All right, and that is the end. That is where we'll stop.